Hi, and welcome back to the Social Determinants of Health for Exercise and Wellness. Again, my name is Dr. Alexis Koskin, and I am your friendly public health professor here at Arizona State University. And in this set of slides, I'm going to talk about specific parenting behaviors and parenting styles, as well as the role of family function, and how that in turn influences the risk for obesity. So there are three main ways. Now, by the way, most of this information comes from that publication that's posted on the very first slide by Ree et al. From, I believe, 2008. And so there are three main ways in which parents can influence obesity. It's through direct specific feeding practices, general parenting behaviors that aren't necessarily targeted at the child and at child feeding practices, and parenting style and family function. Now we're going to look at each of these in a little bit more depth. So some of the feeding practices that influence the way that um, children are fed, parents can limit certain types of foods, such as, oh, we're not going to have this type of food in the household or only this type of food on certain occasion. We're going to try not to have too much caffeine or too much soda in the household, too many fries, etc. Um, there's also been practices that have trained children, have been used as rewards, right, to encourage certain types of behavior. So giving the positive reinforcement of certain types of foods to, again, reward behavior. So if you're good, if you make all A's, I'll take you to go get ice cream. If you do X, Y, and Z, I'll reward you with pizza, right? So you're reinforcing that food as being the positive outcome associated with the behavior that the parent is trying to encourage. Um, and then also um, there have been research studies linking overweight and obesity to encouraging children to finish all of the food on their plate. Interestingly enough, young infants and early toddlers will actually self-regulate the amount of calories. So say at some point in time they eat more at one meal. Over time, infants and toddlers tend to listen to their bodies a bit more than we do as adults, and even as we do as children. And they'll eat less at other meals based on how many calories they consumed earlier on, and vice versa, where they'll actually again self-regulate. But something happens as we get older where we lose that reliance of our feelings of fullness to monitor how much we eat. So I just thought that was a really interesting fact that I just actually learned today. There's some general parenting behaviors which impact children's likelihood of being obese or overweight. Or just food eating patterns in general. So what you expose your children to in the form of what foods do you buy and keep around in the home environment, when you're at different restaurants or if you are at different dining locations, what do you encourage children to try? Do you encourage them to eat more fruits and vegetables? Or is it kind of a more monotonous, less heterogeneous diet that is encouraged? What types of foods are available at home? Do you have more fruits and vegetables at home? What behaviors are you modeling? How much are you modeling as a parent, as well as what types of foods are you modeling eating? Are you eating more fruits and vegetables, or are you eating foods that are more carbohydrates or proteins or dairy? And then also, what are you doing to control portion sizes? So again, these are general parenting behaviors that can impact children's diet and nutrition. And they're also, so here's some really interesting, the next set of slides are on parenting styles as well as family functioning. And I go into a little bit more detail here because these are probably less often the focus of parental influence on obesity and overweight. These are parenting styles and how this in turn impacts children and children's health. So there are two dimensions of parenting styles. There's demandingness, so how much you expect for your child to act in certain ways, how much they are supposed to display maturity, how much parental control the parents have over their children, how much they discipline them. Are they super disciplinarians or are they a lot more lackadaisical in the home setting? And then also, how responsive are they to their children's needs? Are they willing to display warmth and sensitivity and affection, not infection, sorry, and involvement? So these parenting styles are described by Maccabee and Martin as really falling within four major quadrants, with the healthiest parenting style really being the authoritative, creating a positive relationship and enforcing rules. And these other three parenting styles aren't necessarily as effective. An authoritarian, you're the authoritarian, you are the parental figure and they're supposed to obey you, and you're going to be punishment if you're not listening to instruction. Or permissive, you truly are lackadaisical and maybe the child's kind of running over you in terms of who's guiding whom. And then there's uninvolved, where the parents really just providing a little guidance to the child. So again, authoritative is really the healthiest form of a parenting style. And so in terms of parenting style, that responsiveness to a child's needs, especially maternal sensitivity, predicts lower rates of obesity. And parental warmth, so again, higher responsiveness from both parents, has been linked back to increased physical activity as well as willingness to eat more fruits and vegetables. So these are ways in which directly impact behaviors that therefore impact the likelihood or risk of being overweight or obese. There's another really interesting study which looked at how parenting styles, as well as a particular intervention, predicted child weight loss. In this study, which involved parents of obese children, obesity being defined by having a BMI of 30 or above, this intervention was for parents and their children, but who were obese between 8 and 12 years old. So the intervention group received one thing and the control group received another, right? But all of them received meetings with a dietitian over 6 months, weighing in at each session, meeting with a therapist for 15 to 30 minutes, and attending parent-child classes. Now, the intervention group, the parents were trained to really praise their children for reducing the amount of time they're sedentary during the week. And most of these children, well, all of the children to meet inclusion criteria had to be sedentary for more than 15 hours per week. So each week, parents were in the intervention group were told to praise their children for being more active and reducing the amount of hours that they were sedentary. On top of that, they were told to praise their children for recording all of the study information about how active they were during the week. Meanwhile, in the control group parents were not told to praise their children for reducing sedentary behavior. Instead, they were just told to write down and to praise their children for writing down the number of sedentary hours, which hopefully they've been reducing. So outcome measures for this intervention included measures of the child's health, which included body composition, how physically active they were, what did they eat during the week. The dietary intake was the stoplight, red foods or foods you really shouldn't be eating much of, yellow foods or like you can have some, but really try not to eat that many. And green is like, go ahead, eat as many of these as you want. And children were also rated on their adherence to the healthy behavior, and that behavior being more physically active as well as changing their diet. Parents were also measured. Children were given a survey in which they rated their parents' behaviors, and there were three subscales which measured parents' acceptance versus rejection of their child's health, psychological control and autonomy, and were they more of a dominant parenting style or lackadaisical. And interestingly enough, in the control group lost more weight, and what really had the most influential effect on children's weight loss were fathers' parenting style. When children rated that pre-intervention, their parents were less accepting and more rejecting. But over time, because of the intervention, because of their reinforcement, because of the praising, fathers' parenting style changed to be more accepting. They found that when parents changed their parenting style, when fathers changed their parenting style, children more often lost weight and lost more weight. So again, something like changing parenting style can have an impact on the child's health, with that outcome measure really being obesity and being overweight. The other part of these influencing factors is family function. This is the circumplex model that was published by Dr. Olson back in 1989, and it talks about what families are considered more functional versus dysfunctional. If you look within the inside of this square, at the circle on the inside of the square, those are families that are the most functional. They're the most cohesive, and they're the most adaptable. You don't want to be too adaptable, right? Because then you don't really have this feeling of being connected. You don't want to be too close, because sometimes that's being invasive of people's freedom. But you don't want a lack of cohesion completely, because then you're lacking that family engagement. So again, you're really trying to aim towards the inside circle for what would be deemed a more highly functioning family. Interestingly enough, one of the proxies for how functional a family is actually the amount of family meals they eat together. And so there was a research study conducted by Dr. Sen back in 2006 that showed that the more frequently a family dined together, by having dinner together, the reduced likelihood, reduced risk of children in that family were to being overweight or obese. Interestingly enough, this applied to white families only. It did not. It did not pertain. The same findings did not pertain to Black families or Hispanic families, but Caucasian families. So the authors recommended conducting more research to see, to have some to explore, why was this effective in Caucasian families and not in other families. Um, just thought that was really interesting to see, again, how these family functions and how parenting, again, has been linked back to children's health, and particularly their risk for being obese or overweight.